Kia ora, good evening. The defence case in the trial of Gloria Davis, widow of Easy Rider skipper Riwai Karatai, today continued at the Invercargill District Court. Ms Davis has called 3 witnesses in her defence. One appeared during yesterday's session and the court heard the second 2 today. Charges were laid against Ms Davis and her company by Maritime New Zealand following the 2012 sinking of the fishing vessel Easy Rider, which claimed 8 lives. The defence claimed today that because the vessel was being used for recreational purposes at the time of the sinking, Maritime New Zealand rules were not applicable. The trial is expected to conclude tomorrow. The iconic Anderson Park Gallery has failed to reach the minimum earthquake safety requirement, and as a result it is to be closed to the public this evening. Invercargill City Council's Parks Manager Robin Pagan says the building will be closed until further notice, as it's been assessed as being a serious earthquake risk. Mr Pagan says that for public safety, the Invercargill City Council is closing public access to the Anderson Park Art Gallery to allow for a detailed investigation to be undertaken of the building and any strengthening design work to be carried out on the structure. However, he said the Anderson Park grounds and picnic shelter areas will remain open to the public. He added that the council apologises for any inconvenience which may be caused by closing the art gallery. However, public safety is of primary concern. Revisiting an area where miners couldn't access gold deposits over a century ago is proving a boom for a new gold mining operation near Waikaia. Extensive sampling on Freshford land where the Waikaia River used to flow is helping maximise gold recovery for the privately backed venture. Waikaia is an area steeped in gold digging history, and the quest for the precious metal is now being revived by company Waikaia Gold Limited. Beginning operation last year at Freshford in eastern Southland, Waikaia Gold are now recovering alluvial gold from the Waikaia River floodplains.
The gold has already been freed up from the host rock, so we don't have to use any chemical process to extract it.
Alluvial mining is much less complex, with capital costs far less than hard rock operations.
To get it into mine production, it's of the order of $18 million, 18. Whereas something like Macrae's is in the hundreds of millions.
The bulk of the gold is contained in the bottom 4 metres, overlying the basement of the old riverbeds.
But we have about 15 metres of overburden materials that sit on top of that, so that has to be removed.
From there, excavated material moves aboard the floating 300-tonne processing plant before being screened, partially dewatered and passing over a series of jigs that pull the heavy minerals through before being further concentrated through sluice boxes and centrifugal force.
The concentrate then comes back to our gold room facility where the gold is extracted from the other heavy minerals. And we recover it as clean gold, and then we melt it, put it into bar form. So to put it into context, we end up, at the end of the day, having moved thousands of metres of material, we end up with about 10 litres of material back here at the gold room.
The company has an inferred resource of about 140,000 ounces, and flexibility within the operation allows processing to alter depending on the price of gold at the time.
Because it's a new operation and start-up, we determined the best way to get into quick cash flow here was to high-grade it as much as we could.
With around 30 staff on site and another half dozen backup, the company says it's had tremendous local support and that it's a big boost for the Waikaia area.
This project will inject about $15 million a year into the local economy, which is huge.
Landowners and affected parties receive royalties from the gold extracted, and the leased land will be totally rehabilitated when the mining ends. The operation's expected to run for 7 years. Margot Southland, South Today News. The Reserve Bank has left the official cash rate unchanged at 2.5%. Governor Graham Wheeler says the country's economic expansion has considerable momentum, with prices for export commodities remaining very high. He says consumer and business confidence are strong, and the rapid rise in net inward migration over the past year has added to consumption and housing demand. The timing of withdrawal of monetary stimulus remains uncertain, with the scale and speed of the rise in the OCR dependent on future economic indicators. Stay with us. Coming up after the break, battle for the birds and bus fares are set to increase. Welcome back. 1080 will be used to deal with an expected explosion in rat and stoat numbers this year, which threatens the country's native endangered birds. The Department of Conservation's launched its largest ever species protection program, dubbed the Battle for Our Birds. The $21 million project aims to protect 25 million native birds a year over the next 5 years. Southland Forest and Bird Chair Craig Carson today explained why the threat to native birds will be so big this season.
There's going to be a mast year. It comes around every 10, 15 years, and at that stage the beech really flower and really produces seed, huge amounts, far more than is normal. Once all that fantastic rodent food lands on the forest floor, of course rats, mice explode, the populations just explode with all that food available. And once the rats and mice explode, of course stoats explode as well, because they're going to feed on the rats and mice. However, come autumn, spring, winter, when they've eaten the food, what's left is maybe germinating, there's an awful lot of pests, you might say, in the rodents and mustelids. They've suddenly got no food. They'll go looking for anything, and that's when the birds are really at risk.
Forest and Bird, you're supportive of the 1080 drops?
Oh, definitely. We've got to do it. If we don't do it, we're going to lose birds, lose whole species even, and particularly in some areas. No, it's just a job that's absolutely essential.
I think Dr. Nick Smith said the other day 2,000 birds an hour dying. He likened it to arena disaster every hour.
I wouldn't know the numbers, but that would certainly be a great description of the situation.
And we will see a lot of action down here, won't we? Because of course we do have enormous amounts of beech forest. This is one of the key areas, isn't it?
It is. You've got all of Fiordland, you've got the Catlins is another area close, Waikaia, and some of these areas have got quite valuable populations. There's mohua in the Catlins and in the Eglinton, and these populations were just small. Rare birds are small, are so very vulnerable. Fiordland, of course, they probably won't have to do the Waitutu, which was done 2 or 3 years ago with great success. So to be able to carry on further up would be fantastic.
Take some juggling, hula hooping and acrobatic balancing acts, throw in some comedy mixed with a dash of audience participation, and you have the perfect recipe for a buskers festival. The annual event's kicking off in Invercargill tonight. I spoke to Venture Southland's Angela Newell about this year's international lineup.
Artists have come from all over the place, really. We've got the Netherlands, Australia. The way that it comes together is that all of these artists perform at the World Buskers Festival in Christchurch, and last year when the festival director's putting together the whole show, she picks the very best to come to Invercargill. So we're never really sure who we're going to get until they get here, but you can be guaranteed that they'll be the best of the best.
Without going into specifics of the timetable, different locations?
Yes, well what we've done is tried to put the buskers in lots of different places at lots of different times, so they all perform maybe 5 or 6 times over the weekend, so you're able to catch them wherever you are. If you work in town, you might want to come down here to Wapna Place and catch a couple of the shows in your lunch hour, or else you might want to come down to the park in the evening if you're working, or in the afternoon if you whatever. So we're trying to sort of get them in as many different places and times as possible, so that you can see all 7 or 8 shows over the weekend.
So what should audiences be prepared for as they come along?
Well, obviously sense of humour and the chance to have a great bit of fun. You can volunteer if you want to, you don't have to. People sometimes think, oh no, they're going to pick me, but that's not the case if you don't want to get involved. And of course bring a little bit of money, because the buskers of course rely on the generosity of their audiences. So, bring a little bit of money that you can put in their hat and make their day, because they work really hard, and I think everybody appreciates that.
Bus fares are being hiked in the city to keep pace with increased operational costs of the Bus Smart service. The Invercargill City Council is increasing its bus fare by 20 cents from February 17th. Fares will range from $1.70 to $2.60 during peak travel, and a flat rate of $1.20 off-peak. Under fives remain free. Council downsized its bus services from 10 routes to 4 over a year ago. Council's roading manager Russell Pearson says Bus Smart's usage is consistent with last year, and says the service is getting more passengers than during the first month of when Bus Smart was introduced. The Chinese New Year was celebrated today by the ever-growing Chinese student contingent at the Southland Institute of Technology. The Invercargill Chinese Students Association organised the celebrations, which included a Chinese New Year history lesson, some games and a traditional lunch. Hunter Andrews asked SIT Chief Executive Penny Simmons the extent of her Chinese New Year knowledge prior to today's celebrations.
Well, it was pretty vague really. I knew that it changed dates, but I didn't know why. I knew that it was slightly later than ours, so I didn't know why. So it was great that the students took the time to explain to us what was behind the Chinese New Year.
And we've got an ever-increasing number of Chinese students, haven't we, or of Chinese descent here, and it's important that we acknowledge that.
Absolutely, yes. The Chinese student numbers are growing rapidly for us, and it's lovely for them to bring these celebrations with them, so it enhances our culture. And it's really nice for them to have a place to celebrate. They're away from home, and this is traditionally a time of celebration with friends and family, so great for them to be able to replicate that here and not feel quite so isolated from home.
And the food certainly smells very good.
The food's wonderful, yes.
We are quite lucky, aren't we, because we've got Diwali as well. We're getting a huge multicultural look, aren't we, down here in Invercargill because of those students.
And that's lovely, because what we're doing is enhancing our culture by bringing their culture in and sharing each other's celebrations, and it's lovely to know the history behind that. It's lovely to see the different celebrations, so it just really enhances life for us down here, having that diversity.
And this will happen again next year?
I'm sure it will. This was organised by our Chinese Students Association. We helped them a little bit with some funding, but they did all the organising, so it's given them a sense of purpose and a sense of being able to do things themselves that bring some of their homeland here.
And we get to celebrate 2 New Years.
Fantastic. Couldn't ask for anything better.
And that's it from us. Sport is up next. From the news team, good night.